There's a conversation happening that almost nobody is having, honestly, about men over 60 and attraction, about what actually happens when a man in his 60s walks into a room with a certain quality about him, and why women respond to it in a way they often can't explain. The story most men in this age group have been told goes something like this: your window has closed. The variables that matter: youth, a certain kind of energy, the visible markers of vitality, those have moved on without you. What you have left is money, if you're lucky, status, if you've built it, and the resigned acceptance that the landscape has fundamentally shifted against you. That story is not just incomplete, it's wrong. And the men who have figured out that it's wrong, those men move through the world differently. Women respond to them differently. Something that only becomes available through the accumulation of real experience, real loss, real arrival at a settled sense of who you are. The question worth asking is not whether that quality exists. It does. The question is whether you've developed it, or whether you're still, without realizing it, operating from the old framework, the one that was never going to work the way you hoped. Here's what actually drives attraction in women when it comes to men of this age, and it has very little to do with what most men think it does. A woman who is herself mature, who has lived through enough relationships and enough disappointment to know the difference between what she thought she wanted at 30 and what she actually needs now. That woman is not looking for what she used to look for: the performance of confidence, the visible markers of ambition, the restless energy of a man still proving himself to the world. She's had all of that. In many cases, she's exhausted by it. What she is looking for, often without being able to name it directly, is a man who doesn't need anything from her in the way most men have needed things, who isn't quietly auditioning, who isn't measuring himself against her response and adjusting accordingly, who is, in the most fundamental sense, already complete, and is choosing her presence out of genuine interest rather than out of the anxious search for something he hasn't yet found in himself. That quality, and there is a word for it, though the word is less important than the thing itself, is what psychologists call outcome independence, the genuine absence of attachment to a specific result. Not performed indifference, not the strategy of playing hard to get, but the real thing. The actual experience of being so grounded in who you are and what your life contains that any individual interaction, however appealing, is something you engage with from fullness rather than from lack. This is not something a 25-year-old can have, not really, because he is still building the thing that would give it to him. He is still in the process of becoming, still discovering who he is through what he achieves, what he experiences, who he impresses. That process is necessary, and it has its own kind of energy. But it is not the same energy as a man who has arrived somewhere, who knows, through decades of actual living, what matters and what doesn't, who has failed at things and survived the failure, who has loved and lost and built himself back, who no longer needs the world to confirm his value because he has enough history with himself to know what it is. That is the weapon most men over 60 are sitting on without using it. The reason they don't use it is usually that they're still fighting the wrong battle, still trying to compete in a domain where younger men have structural advantages: appearance, energy, the simple arithmetic of age, rather than occupying the territory where they have no real competition at all. Watch how many men in their 60s spend their energy on the surface: the clothes that push toward younger, the conversation engineered to signal relevance, the subtle anxiety underneath every interaction with an attractive woman that is actually asking, do I still register? Am I still visible? The answer they're looking for is validation, and it arrives in her response. And when it doesn't arrive cleanly, the anxiety increases and becomes more visible and less attractive in direct proportion. Women pick this up immediately. The need underneath the presentation is palpable. And need, when it operates as the organizing energy of an interaction, creates a specific kind of discomfort that is very hard to stay relaxed in. She can feel that her response matters too much, that the stakes are too high, that she is somehow responsible for the emotional outcome of the conversation. And that's an enormous amount of weight to place on someone you've just met. The man operating from outcome independence doesn't create that weight, because he genuinely doesn't need her to respond in any particular way. He is engaged, present, warm, but none of that warmth is contingent on a specific return. It arrives without conditions. And the experience of receiving warmth without conditions, of being in the presence of someone who is not quietly angling for something, who is simply and fully there, is rare enough to be immediately distinctive. That distinctiveness is what creates the pull. The actual psychological reality of being with a man who is complete in himself. Here's where it's worth being direct about something that most conversations around this topic skip over. Developing real outcome independence is not a 12-minute exercise. With what you've built, what you value, what you do with your days that has nothing to do with whether any particular woman is impressed by it. Men who have this quality organically share certain things. They have something they care about that absorbs real energy. Work, creative projects, physical practice, something that gives their days meaning independent of anyone else's presence. They have friendships that are real rather than functional. They have a physical relationship with their body that isn't primarily about appearance, but about the experience of feeling capable and vital. And they have made some kind of peace with the things in their past that didn't go the way they hoped. That peace is visible, not in what they say about it, but in how they carry the weight of their own history. A man who has genuinely processed loss, who can speak about hard chapters without bitterness, without the need for sympathy, without positioning himself as a victim of circumstance. That man communicates something that goes very deep. He has been through things, and it hasn't closed him off. He is still open, still curious, still available to whatever comes next. That openness, combined with the stability of someone who knows who he is a combination that younger men simply don't have access to yet. It is also what women find most compelling about men of this age when they find it at all. Which is less often than it should be, because most men are too busy compensating for their age rather than inhabiting its actual advantages. The practical question worth sitting with is not how to appear more confident. It's what, if anything, in your daily life is generating genuine confidence from the inside, rather than performing it from the outside. A man who has something real going on, whose days have texture and purpose and things he actually cares about, doesn't walk into a room trying to be noticed. He walks in occupied by his own life. And that occupation reads as presence, as substance, as the specific quality that makes someone worth being curious about, because there is clearly more there than what's immediately visible. The contrast with desperation could not be more stark. Desperation is visible in the way someone enters a space, the scanning for how they're being received, the adjustment of presentation based on who's watching, the invisible question running underneath every interaction. Am I enough here? Presence is the opposite. It's the quality of someone who entered the room already answered. That is what women can't resist in men over 60 who have it. Not the age itself. The age is irrelevant. The settled, unperforming, genuinely at-home quality of a man who has lived enough to stop trying to be someone he's not. The man who is curious about her, rather than anxious about her assessment of him. The man who can hold a conversation without the conversation being about winning it. If there's one thing worth understanding about the psychology underneath all of this, about what actually drives how women respond to men at this age and any other, it's that the surface level almost never tells the whole story. The forbidden manual of female psychology goes where this video can't. What women systematically do and respond to, but will never say in those exact words. The architecture underneath the signals. If today's conversation opened something for you, the manual takes it further. It's in the description, one link worth your time. The men who are genuinely thriving in their dating lives at 60 and beyond are not the ones who found the right strategy or the right look or the right way to present themselves. They are the men who stopped needing to, who arrived somewhere internally that made the whole performance unnecessary, who became, through the actual work of living well and reflecting honestly on that living, the kind of person who is simply worth being around, and whose age, rather than being a liability to compensate for, became part of what makes them interesting. That's available to any man willing to do the actual work, not the 12-minute version, the real version, the one that involves looking honestly at what you're generating with your life, what you're still holding on to that needs to be put down, and what you're not yet giving yourself credit for having survived and built and become. The men who have done that work, who are still doing it, because it doesn't really end, those men don't worry about whether their age is working against them. They're too busy living to worry about it. And that, more than anything else, is exactly what makes them impossible to ignore. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.